I guess what I would do is rewind and say, like, your standards have to be there before you can have culture. And you got to determine kind of what you want your culture to be. Well, like, what do you stand for as a head coach? Like, what are the things that are most important to you? And yes, I don't know any guy that is in coaching that isn't competitive and doesn't dream of winning a state championship. And I'm certainly on that list. But it's got to be about more than just basketball.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head boys basketball coach at Reagan High School, John Hirst. Coach Hirst has been coaching for 32 years and 24 as a head coach. His career record is 527 wins and 264 losses. Coach Hirst's programs have won 10 district championships and have made playoffs 21 out of 24 seasons. He's won multiple Coach of the Year awards, coached in several All-Star games, and has been a speaker presenter at multiple coaching clinics. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
The Jamodi Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? What a fun night this is going to be. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Coach Wester had just the best things to say about you, which hopefully you take that as a compliment. But
I do. He's the best. Man, I've been listening to a lot of yours. I listen to Matt's, of course. He's a guy that gives all of us guys, even old guys like me, hope still that you can win it without cheating.
That it's possible to have kids come up through your system.
Yeah.
And to do it like he did it. Yeah. He lived the dream and he gave us all hope, no doubt.
And absolutely. But I've been listening to quite a few. You've had so many guys that I'm friends with on, from Todd Duncan to Danny Nix to Lutz and Golding. And I've just been listening to tons. You had Ty Tabor on. His son is our head girls coach here. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, we've had, I've just enjoyed listening to so many of your podcasts. It's been incredible.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. It is fun about the basketball community, really how small it is, and how through just a couple people you can pretty much connect to anybody. And the state of Texas is so big, but then you even start to get beyond it. And so I do love that about this profession.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. You do a great job. It's really fun listening. You hadn't had a clunker yet. You're up over 200 now. I know, because I saw the big deal on social media that you had hit 200, which, by the way, congratulations again. And man, you just, you do a fabulous job. You're also a great host. I'm going to try not to bore you to death here this evening.
Coach, it'll be good. And I'll have to edit all of those nice comments out there. But no, I also want to thank you. Or you said congrats on 200, man. I want to say congrats on 500, because that number right there is incredible. And one, it says a lot about you as a coach, but it says a lot about the teams that you've had and the longevity, because this, as much as we love getting to do what we do, what is the quote that the days are long, but the years are short in what we do? And every coach kind of knows what that feels like.
100%. I appreciate that. You're kind to say it. I'm the luckiest guy Matt. You don't know anybody luckier than me. I've worked with so many great kids and so many great assistant coaches, and I've had such great family support, and I've been on so many campuses where they allow you to try to have some success, they want you to be successful. You don't know anybody luckier than me. I'm a lucky guy.
Oh, I do get that. I feel that way with my wife for sure. I think anybody that knows the lovely Miss Jana knows that I got real lucky right there. But I do hope that a lot of coaches feel that way about where they are. And we all hear about the tough jobs and difficult bosses, difficult parents. But I think for those stories you don't hear a huge number of people that are thankful to be where they are, being faithful where they are, and making the very, very best of the situation where they're at.
Well, it's like the old Frosty Western quote, right? Like, make the big time where you are. I mean, I love it. I'm a big quote guy, by the way. We have quotes on every, almost every scouting report we've ever had, and I find a lot of inspiration, a lot of good ideas, and helps you it just kind of reminds you there's nothing really new under the sun, right?
Right.
I mean, there's a quote for just about everything, and usually there's a inspirational or an uplifting or a positive quote if you're willing to look for it. And I'll be honest, I got to find those things, and I love Frosty Westring and all of his quotes, and he's not the only one, but I think it's important for, especially some of these younger coaches that we work with now, because I'm no longer one of those younger coaches. To pass those things along. There's so much negativity in the world, and it's so easy to be negative, right? It's so easy to, get bogged down in the minutia that we have to deal with, that you miss out on all the great stuff. And I try to be as self-aware as I can. I know I'm really lucky, from my wife, like you, to my sons and my friends, the people I get to work with. And it's been that way. I'm telling you, I've been really lucky. It's been that way for me every stop along our journey. It's been pretty amazing.
Man, so many great points there. And a great reminder is it's hard to complain when you're bringing gratitude. So if we wake up every day thankful for the opportunity that we have, grateful to be at the place where we are, then I think we just see it through a different lens at that point. But if you go the other route of complaining, what does John Gordon said? He has the no complaining rule. Like, try it for a day, try it for a couple days or a week to not complain at all. And I think it just changes maybe the outlook you have on things. All of a sudden you start seeing more opportunities instead of obstacles in our way.
Well, Matt, it's funny you say that. Well, I'm probably going to talk about gratitude later in our conversation at some point. I feel like it'll probably come up, but so many of your podcasts, and so like I said, I've listened to, certainly not all 200, but every one of them I've found a little inspiration. And there's so many, especially in our profession and in coaching, and I think probably in basketball in particular, because we work with smaller units of people, and young people and young men. I think that it is. I have found a lot of inspiration and felt uplifted after listening to so many of your podcasts. Like I said, you've talked to so many guys that are such great coaches and such great people, and they're all so humble. Just that alone inspires me, and needless to say, you got Danny Henderson on here, and that guy's like the smartest basketball guy I've ever met, and I'm lucky to call him a friend. And so, like, I could just start rattling off. I don't want to be a name dropper and rattle off every single guy that I've listened to, but every one of them, every single one of them, I've thought, and I'm really glad that I listened to that. I feel a little bit better after listening to that. Sometimes it's, affirmation of things that we're already doing, but sometimes it's, hey, you know what, we could do that better. I like that. Whatever, on the court, off the court, whatever it may be. And I credit you and your podcast for that. You've done a tremendous job. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I hope you won't edit all that out.
Okay.
I mean that. I really do.
All of this will be a part of the intro, so it's all good. But there's a couple motivations for doing this, and one is for guys like you for you to have a platform to talk about your program and the things that you do, because, and I've said this before, I think unless you win state in Texas, that's the only way you're getting on that TABC stage where people get to see a little bit more into the good things that you do. For most of us, I've never done it, and for most of us, there's a good chance we won't. So here's maybe a way, but there's a selfish motivation to this too, and it's to learn. And it's what Coach Thomas said this year he was one of my first talks I ever had on here. Tommy Thomas, he was my high school coach, and he said when he had those really good players, Darren and Bracy back in the day, and all of the coaches were coming to their gym, he said a lot of guys wanted jobs from these players. They wanted to get to college. They wanted this. And he told Bill Self, he says, I don't want a job from you. I want everything that you do well. Like, I want you to give me your good stuff. And I always thought about that, like when I'm talking with coaches, not that this is obviously going to be back and forth and we're both going to get to learn, but like, I want to know about you and the things that you do. And I want to try to borrow as much as I can. But one thing that really stands out to me from a lot of these coaches, and you said a lot of the names, is the humility that they have. I mean, these guys that I look up to, you mentioned Danny Henderson. He is incredible. The talent that he has, the mind that he has, his ability to communicate, just more than I think I'll ever possess, but the humility that he has with it. And I don't know. I think maybe that humility is inspiring. Like, I want to, if I was a player, I'd want to play for somebody like that. I want to work for somebody like that, coach's clinic, I want to listen to that person. So maybe a good reminder for us, no matter what direction, how many wins, how many state championships, how many people listen with this or that, just to stay humble and grateful where we are. And I just think you kind of nailed it with naming some of those guys.
Well, I'll throw another one at you. You were talking about Coach Thomas. I just recently listened to your visit with Cleve Ryan, and Cleve's been a friend of mine. We've worked the old THSCA when we were still allowed to have all-star games. Cleve and I worked together, and that's where we became friends. And you don't get much more humble than Cleve. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Your lineup has been off the charts, man. And I'm not even talking about like,
man, we're running out of people. Who do we go to? No, like that. But that's the beauty of it too. Through the list, like, I've barely had to tap into it. So there's this idea that at some point when I do, through either Twitter or my own little circle or whatever, when I do run out of people, what am I going to do? And I mean, the idea is I'll go back through guests and I'll say, hey, is there two people that you could, and I've done that a few times over the last few years. And this is an example of it. I mean, Coach Wester just out of the blue texted me and said, hey, here's a guy you got to have on. You can talk hoops forever. And so I think that is just an easy way for this thing to keep going, because yeah, like I am proud of, and I enjoyed all the people that we've had on here, but I know that there's so many more coaches that you most likely would never hear of. And this goes back to the very beginning of when the kind of a light bulb moment is. I've always liked talking with coaches, and at PGC clinics when I would direct, my favorite thing to do would be at the end of the night to have this coaches circle, and we would just talk, and we'd go for hours. And I remember thinking, like, this is the good stuff. And then I'd work with the athletes the next day. Well, then COVID hit, and me and this girls coach are talking about shooting, because that's, I think, one of the only things I'm qualified to talk about. And if you want defense from me, I can't help you. But no, we're talking shooting, and then it just kind of morphed into, hey, what's some culture stuff that you do? And she shared some things. I was like, golly, like, that's really good. And if we weren't talking about shooting on this Zoom, I would have never known that. And that's really where this all started, was how many other people have great stuff and connect with their players in a way that is transformational, and we can learn from them. So, Coach, appreciate all of that. Can't wait for this to get going with all the praise and stuff. You ready? You ready to get going?
Sure. Anything you want to talk about, I'm game for it. I'm grateful and flattered and humbled to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, we're recording this whole time, and I do typically use just the fun little bits at the beginning as kind of an intro. I'll do a bio on you separately as we get closer to the time, just to save a little bit here. I have the questions that you chose, and I love them. And normally, like with a guy like you, we probably don't even have to actually say the questions. It just flows right through. But it gives me a little bit of a roadmap. It's 4:53. What time do you have? When do you need to be off here so I can be conscious of it?
Buddy, my wife has got the express elevator straight to heaven. She is the most understanding basketball wife that I've ever known. And the old deal, I'll kick my coverage. I've got a kitchen pass to stay and talk basketball as long as you'll have me.
Yeah, well, my wife knows on these nights. So, I mean, usually we go for hour and a half, but she knows not to have a time set. So, because this is fun for me. But yeah, we'll just start going through some questions and then see where it goes.
Awesome.
All right. So culture is a buzzword that thrown around quite a bit now. I remember Coach Fitch from Birdville, making a comment about how we never used to say that word. It was just, it wasn't a thing, but culture's always been there. And you either have one that's moving up or moving down, very hard or impossible for it to stay the same. In your opinion, how does culture drive performance?
Well, I think, I know the word culture has almost become cliche, right? I mean, so many people use it, but we do as well. We're part of the cliche, I guess. But I really do believe that we really do believe that everything that you do, whether it be outside the gym, inside the gym, it's for your program, it's all connected. It's all got to be connected. And so I think that there's many things that drive it, but I've heard on some of your other podcasts, people talk about their standards and things like that. I guess what I would do is rewind and say, like, your standards have to be there before you can have culture. And you got to determine kind of what you want your culture to be. Well, like, what do you stand for as a head coach? Like, what are the things that are most important to you? And yes, I don't know any guy that is in coaching that isn't competitive and doesn't dream of winning a state championship. And I'm certainly on that list. And but it's got to be about more than just basketball, right? I mean, it has to be about more. If it's just basketball, then we're not making that much money. I understand, right. If you're in the NBA, it's more about the money. But we're high school coaches, and we're supposed to teach more than just X's and O's. And in my opinion, my father was a coach for 39 years. And I first got the bug to become a coach really from him. He had so many friends in the coaching fraternity. He had such great relationships, and there were always coaches and coaches' families over at our house when I was growing up. And then he had so many former players that went into coaching. I always thought that was just amazing. And I wanted to kind of follow it along. For me, well, I was always a huge sports fan of all levels, both collegiately and professionally. For me, the Giants were your high school coaches, and I loved the idea of trying to join that fraternity and be a part of it. But I also love the fact that, and I'm totally biased, I wish my father were still with us today. I'd probably have him sitting in here on the meeting with us. But it was not just that he had great relationships, but why did he have those great relationships? Well, he taught kids things that beyond just the game. And that always appealed to me as well. And, when he retired, he said, I asked him a couple of questions, and he said, kids haven't changed. In my 39 years, kids hadn't changed. Some of the parents have changed. Some of the parenting ideas have changed. But kids still want to be a part of something. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And whether they know it or not, most of the time, those kids still want discipline. They don't necessarily know it, but there's something that inside them that wants it. And I believe in all of that stuff. And so the standards, I think, come before the culture. And so, like, how do we do anything? Well, what's a great quote? How you do anything is how you do everything, right? So it's all got to be connected. Nobody's going to care in 10 years if one of our guys knows how to run an out-of-bounds play or break a press. But they are going to care, is he a good husband? Is he a good father? Does he contribute to his community? And we're not going to be solely responsible for that, but there's a lot of things through basketball that we can help teach those things with, right? We don't want basketball to use kids. We want kids to use basketball to teach them and open roadmaps for them down the line. When let's be honest, most of us, are not going to be talented enough to get their education paid for through basketball. We're just not. I think your standards have to, like Coach K had a great interview. One of my assistants, JJ Anguiano, who's fantastic, a couple years ago, he said, I was watching an interview with Coach K. It was after they got knocked out in, like, I don't know, the second round or third round. It was one of their they still went 2 or 3 deep in the tournament, and everybody was disappointed because, they weren't in the Final Four. Typical. But he said that Coach K was being interviewed, and he said, I really like this team. I like these kids. I thought we had a chance to maybe make a run, but the truth of the matter is we weren't worthy of winning a championship. We didn't do things off the court that made us worthy of being champions. And that really kind of struck a chord in me. Like, what do you stand for? Are we teaching kids to fight entitlement every day? Like, we've got to fight entitlement in every day in every way. And I think that, do we park where we're supposed to park at school, or are we parking in the teacher's lot because it's closer? Do we cut in line in the cafeteria because we're an athlete, or do we kind of help move the line along and take our rightful place? Do we show up on time? Are we respectful to our teachers? Do we hold the door? Do we say please, thank you? Are we doing things that frankly are not that common, sadly, I think, in our society anymore? And if we aren't, then they're still young people. They're still the same as they were generations ago. They still want the same things. They just don't know it. But maybe we're not doing a good enough job of teaching those things. So I think, it's important to teach kids how to make some self-sacrifice, be a part of something special, right? Are you willing to get your hair cut? Are you willing to keep a clean shave? Are you willing to sacrifice a few things so that you can be part of an elite unit and a special unit? And that's our basketball team. And then if you get all of those things in place, then that helps determine your culture. Like, for us, everything is related. So then the culture piece comes in, and is it on the court or off the court? Again, I think it's all related. When I first moved to San Antonio, I took the assistant's job at Clark High School, and I worked with I worked for 3 head coaches, and they were all incredible. One of them's in the Hall of Fame, TABC Hall of Fame, Carl Owens at Harlingen, and then Greg Kiger I worked with for 1 year at McAllen. We're still close to this day. He opened my eyes to so many things. And then I moved up here after being a head coach for 5 years, took an assistant's job with Kevin Hamilton, who I thought was a basketball savant. I thought, I'd never seen anybody whose brain worked as good as his. But as much of the X's and O's as he loved, he was a culture guy. Chris Hill, another guy you had on, played for Kevin at Clark High School. And Kevin had an incredible recall. He could recall every kid's name that played for him. And he loved those kids, but he was tough on them, and he had standards, and they had to live up to those standards. And then they were good. It was like all the basketball pieces fell into place when everything else was already set in stone. I think that culture drives performance in many ways. We stole our cliche for culture from Beard. I've been lucky enough. Beard and I met when we were still in college. We were working Tom Pender's camps. In fact, great story. We met the very first time. We were fired up. He was a manager, and I was in college out in Lubbock, and I was traveling around. I came down and was working camps all over, and we got announced, hey, we got the commissioners for the JUCO League are going to be Coach Beard and Coach Hirst. We're fired up. Are you kidding? We're like, 20 years old, 19 years old. Like, we're the commissioners of our own. Well, the JUCOs were like the 5 and 6 year olds. And it was in the middle of July back then. And they gave us 30 or 40 5 and 6 year olds all day long over at the outdoor courts at Jester Center.
Wow.
In Austin. It was brutal. It was so bad. And so we've been friends a long time, but he coined, Coach Knight's old great quote of the mental is to physical is 4 is to 1. And he's got 4 to 1 plastered everywhere. And I talked to him. I said, hey, man, I know that's your deal, but we kind of want to steal that. And he was nice enough to say, yeah, go ahead. And we've kind of twisted it to make it our own. But with all of those things that we try to teach through basketball off the court, I think that it kind of relates to things on the court. I mean, not kind of, like 100%. Like, whether we are or we are not, Matt, our teams think that we're the hardest playing team in the state. Like, our goal every year, we're going to take more charges than any other team in any other classification in the state. We're going to dive on the floor for loose balls. We're going to absolutely never call anything a 50-50 ball. If it's loose, it should be our ball. If we can get both hands on the ball, it's got to be our ball. And we're not going to apologize to anybody for playing as physical as we can. If there's a collision and it's an honest play, we'll stick a hand out and help somebody up, but we're not going to apologize for it, because we want to be the most physical team on the floor. And then we talk about it. Okay, as important as that is our baseline. If our baseline is then we're going to be the most physical team on the floor, now it's 4 times more important to be the strongest mentally on the floor. But what does that mean to kids today? I mean, we keep our jerseys tucked in while we're in the gym. If we come in the gym, our jerseys are tucked in. and they stay tucked in until we get back in the locker room. We're not going to, have a foul called on us and throw our hands up and try to show up the officials. And we're not going to untuck our jersey as we walk off over to the bench and, hey, everybody, look at me. We're not going to do those type of things. I just don't believe in it. And our coaching staff doesn't believe in it. And we've been doing it long enough now and had enough success with enough great players that it's easy now for us to say, hey, we've had better players than you, and they were able to live up to these standards, and you're going to have to live up to them also. I think that going back to fighting entitlement, like I feel embarrassed for coaches when we play in these shootouts in the spring and the summer, or like at a tournament game where we come on right after a game finished before us and there's just bottles and trash left underneath their benches. I'm always embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for the coach. Like, oh my gosh, he's really missing an opportunity. We clean it up before we start. We'll clean up somebody else's. Do we leave our video room, our classroom, our weight room, our locker room, our gym? Do we leave it nicer than we found it every day? Like, those things are directly related to basketball. You want to ask how culture drives performance? Well, it's all connected, and I think that stuff is super important. Can we remain focused in practice? Like, if you're not the guy that's out there on the court being corrected, if you're on the side, can you be locked in? Right? Like, can you say, okay, I'm listening. I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to learn from somebody else's mistake. Or are you sitting over on the side and you're not focused on what's happening and you're just saying, oh, woe is me, I'm not out there right now, and I'll start focusing when I get on the court. Well, it's too late. When adversity hits, how do we handle it? Like I said, we're not going to untuck our jerseys. We're not going to have bad body language. We're not going to sit on the bench with our feet thrown out in front of us and our arms crossed. We want to be genuinely invested in the team. And those are things that we think are learned from the values and the standards off the court. And then they bleed right into how you want to play. And all of those things are related in my mind. I don't know, I may be doing a terrible job of articulating it all here, but we get it. The way we want to play and the standards that we have and the culture that we embrace probably isn't for everybody. It's probably not. It can be very challenging for young people because we're not going to take a day off. One of the things that I learned from Beard going out to all his practices, I think one of his secret powers is like he doesn't take a possession off in practice. I mean, everybody is on point all the time, and nobody is above being called out. Nobody. Not assistant coaches, not GAs, not managers, and certainly not players. And that's hard. It's hard to not lose your own focus in practice and be upset about something else. And so all of a sudden you don't notice that little Timmy's jersey is untucked, or, he's not wearing white socks. It's hard to stay focused and yet not lose sight of what we're really trying to do. I think that's one of his superpowers and one of the things that I admire and respect about him and that we tried to kind of learn along the way. I could go on and on. I mean, do we show up early and leave late? Do we have genuine enthusiasm when our teammate does something, or are we really kind of secretly envious? Why not me? I think, we try to use every single day in our practices to get better on the court, but we also try to use it for character development every single day. Every day our practices are meant to be, some form of character development. And you never know what's going to present itself each day. Yeah. Like, is somebody late? And don't get me wrong, our guys make mistakes more than anybody I know. Matt, you'll come and watch us play sometime or come to a practice and think, well, heck, all of those things old Hirst just said, their kids aren't doing half of them. Well, that means we hadn't taught them well enough yet, and it's an ongoing process. And so we try to kind of push them and push ourselves. But I think that you can't be a championship team unless you're worthy of it. Let me rephrase. If you have accumulated enough talent so that the talent gap is so far removed from others, then maybe some of these things that we're preaching don't matter as far as winning a championship. But they will matter somewhere down the line. And they will matter after basketball. And I believe that. And I believe that, we're in the greatest profession in the world. We're high school coaches. We're high school coaches, and it's the best profession in the whole world. Certainly not because of the paycheck, but because look what we get to do every day. We get to teach life lessons, and we get to help kids get over what can be a tough time for them. And we get to do it all while being involved in the funnest game there is, basketball. I'm a firm believer in that. And I do think Coach K was right. Championship teams, generally speaking, they're worthy of it, both on but also off the court. I don't know if I may have gotten all my signals crossed and
Coach,
maybe convoluted, but.
No, I just want to first celebrate you. I thought that was awesome. I mean, you did go straight for a long period of time, and I don't know if you took a breath, but it was like what you were saying was right on the money. And I wrote a couple notes down to kind of go back over. Love the Coach K quote, and I think you're right. Life's not fair. Sometimes guys have just players that are better and beats guys that are trying to do those little things right. But you're right. Like again, there's more to Phil Jackson said there's more to life than basketball, but there's more to basketball than basketball. And so I think you nailed it with what we're teaching. And just a couple things. I love that you said it's all connected. And everything that we do is culture. The way that we show up every day on the floor, off the floor, every little interaction, every social media post, everything matters. And so I think one of the hardest things for a coach, and it's kind of what you said with Coach Beard, is how focused he was, is to not let something slip by as if it's not important. I think that level of focus it takes training. And I had a coach, we were just talking about maybe like schedules, daily schedules and breakdowns with practice and things. And he asked me, when do you do your team building or your culture building? And I just kind of paused and I said, well, all the time, like daily. every second. I don't have a set 5 minutes of this. And then I think one of the superpowers we all need to have is the ability to see culture moments happen right in that moment. When you see a player, like I typically like to, we have 6 baskets going. It's me and 30 kids. So I like our players to be truly player led, for them to zoom out and see what the gym needs. And so when we're organized and we teach the drill, we go and we got a group of 7, freshmen over there, and we only need to have 3 or 4 at a basket. I'll get a senior that turns and zooms out and sees that and goes and organizes it. Well, do I just let that go, maybe give them a thumbs up? Or when I bring it back in before the next thing, hey, by the way, amazing moment by Mason. I think those are those things that we have to do. But so it is all connected. I guess here's a question for you. Oh, before I get to the question, one more thing is Kelvin Sampson said, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there. I think the direction we want to go, or the road, is our standards. And the road to our culture is our standards. So we better know our standards. If we don't know those, then we're going to wind up at a culture that maybe we don't really agree with. So I completely love what you said there. Here's my question is, can everything, maybe this is contradicting what I just said, can everything be important? Or can we care as coaches? Can we care about everything? Or are there things that we need to let go of some control of? I know I've changed on some things, like team shoes. Used to do team shoes all the time until my best player says, Coach, this style of shoe hurts my foot. And I thought, he averages 28 points a game. He's a great kid, does everything. Do I really want him to be miserable? So are there things that we can give up, but yet not feel like we're losing our culture?
Yeah, for sure. Your question and comments are on point. I remember there was, back when Sports Illustrated was still something that we all, couldn't wait to be delivered or to go pick up at the corner store, before technology kind of changed all that. One of the greatest articles I ever read was written by Frank DeFord, and it was on Bob Knight, and it had a picture of Coach Knight on the cover. He was out hunting. He had his full gear on. I think it was called The Rabbit Hunter. And at the end, the gist of the story was, because it was a fair article, I thought at the time, in that, he was a genius and still flawed, right? And would his flaws eventually overtake his genius or vice versa? Now that's a simplification, but the question was, is he too busy hunting rabbits and the elephant's going to get him? I mean, it was something along those lines. And that's kind of like what I was saying. Some of the best coaches, certainly Beard, but some other coaches also, that I've known. Steve Celestine here in San Antonio is one of the best high school coaches I've ever known. Those guys, that there is a secret power, a secret superpower to paying attention to the details, but not letting the details overwhelm you, and being flexible enough, being consistent enough so that rules still mean something, but flexible enough to recognize when, hey, my best player who's never done anything, he's busted his butt, and these shoes are killing his feet. Why am I making him wear these shoes? Like, you'd be amazed. Like, I have these weird things, like we're going to wear white socks, mid-calf socks. Part of that is a tip of the cap to Kevin Hamilton, Coach Hill's high school coach, who sadly is not with us anymore. But when I became his assistant, we wore white mid-calf socks, and it was just one of his non-negotiables. Now, I will tell you, if you walk in our gym at any practice, we'll have our reversible jerseys on. We'll have white mid-calf socks. Our jerseys will be tucked in, and there is no telling what kind of shorts we'll be wearing. None, zero. We could have black, gray, white, green. Those are things that don't matter to me. And that's one of the things that, like, we talk to our guys and share with them, like, hey, we're going to ask you to make a few sacrifices. Like, your hair is one of them. Being clean shaven is how you represent us, how you look, how you represent your family name, and how you represent our family name are important to us, right? But when we're getting our work done, if guys are busting their butt, I'm not really that worried about, if they're preparing to play the way we want to play, we want them to be focused on that and not on, I've got the wrong color shorts on. There's some things that I don't want to be out shooting the rabbits if there's elephants out there.
Mike Neighbors had a really good point about his pet peeves, and I think every coach needs to know their pet peeves, and I think they have to be able to articulate those to their players. But then here's one way that players may be slightly different today, is that they want to know why. When Coach Thomas told me anything back in the day, or Coach Bliss, I just said, yes, sir. I didn't ask why. And that was still that time. But because of the phones, because of parenting, they've been asking why forever. And so why would this be any different, that I don't get to know why? So I do think whatever standards, whatever pet peeves, whatever white socks, because I do white or red socks below the calf. We don't do sleeves here. We don't do this. We call it the faith way. And it is nice, Coach, when you get to be at a place long enough to where you just kind of have that, not clout, but I get to talk about Carter Bross in 2013. He was hurt, one of our best players. He was hurt. He's standing next to me in warm-ups, and this team has headbands, sleeves, different colored shoes, all over the thing. And we're down here with our team shoes, white socks below the calf, looking like a unit. And he goes, Coach, I just love how we do things. I was like, what do you mean, Carter? And he said, I mean, they just don't look like a team. We look like a team. And I've used that story. I was like, if that's good enough for Carter Bross, then it's good for any of us here. And so there are those things, but we need to know our pet peeves, be able to explain the why. I also think we need to know theirs. Like, what things do we do that they don't like? And I think those are kind of fun conversations you can have with your players.
I think that's a great point. And I also think like you, I'm not like, if the trainer says you need to put on an arm sleeve, if you hurt your elbow, then put on the arm sleeve.
I need a doctor's note. I need a doctor's note.
We're not into, I'm not but that goes to like what we were just talking about. Like, that goes to the culture, right? Like, it's not about the show. Here's the deal about culture. It's got to be real. Like, it has to be real. Kids smell a phony faster than anybody. And that hasn't changed. In my 32 years, that has not changed. Kids smell a phony before anybody. Parents, adults, certainly coaches can be conned a little bit early by somebody, but not kids. And so whatever it is that your standards are, they got to be real and they got to be consistent, but they also got to know that you care about them, right? And so, like you said, have some of those fun conversations. all you're really doing there is showing them, hey, I'm not just saying I care about you. I care about you. Like, it's real.
Yeah.
Like, we spend more time with you than we spend with our own kids. I mean, and that's just a fact. In season, you just look at the numbers and the amount of time that you spend, it's more for somebody else's kids than theirs, than their own. And so I think as long as it's real, as long as, and we're not into fluff. I'm not, we don't sit around and crisscross applesauce and hold hands and sing kumbaya. We don't do a bunch of that stuff. Don't get me wrong, but we love genuine enthusiasm. If somebody hits the floor for any reason and it's an effort play, everybody in the gym's going to be over there picking them up in a game. We're going to explode off of the bench and everybody's going to be excited about it. And we show those things on film. We brag on those things. It can't also just be about correcting and teaching. You have to have little celebrations in there too. You've got to reward kids. And then I do agree, it is important for them to know why. Like, we pull them in all the time. We may have a classroom session. We'll tell them, hey, listen, this is why we're doing this. When I was your age, like you just said, there was no why. It was because I'm the coach. Shut up, get over there and do it. We don't want to be that way. Like, we want you to know why. We want you to be invested in this.
Yeah.
We want you to know so that when you talk to your friends and they play some other program somewhere, spring or summer program, if they're not telling you why, you should be able to ask why. And you can tell them why we do things. We want you to know. This is a partnership. I mean, this is not a 1950s era, hey, you're going to do it just because I said to do it. I'm not that smart.
And I think that ultimately makes us better teachers, because if we know that they will ask why, we better have the reason. And so I think it makes us better. And you mentioned something earlier too that I think is right on the money. Your standards have to work on and off the floor. Now, I've heard some coaches talk about they have their playing standards, they have their culture standards or program standards, and I get there's maybe it's possible to have different sets, but I think one thing we have to always be careful of is whatever words, whatever acronym, whatever way that we're showing up every day, they better be able to see a translation between real life and the court. Because if it's just basketball, like for us, if shooting threes, if that was one of our standards, running and gunning was one of our standards, okay, I get it. Like, when we show up to a game, we're going to know who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. What does that connect with in the classroom? What does that connect with on a Friday night when there's a choice that they have to make that's really hard between what's good for the team and what's not good for the team? So I agree with you. I think those standards, they work on and off the floor. And I know you probably feel the same way, Coach. That's the good stuff. Like, that's when we get to really get into why this is special. Not out of bounds plays and not it's when we get to talk about one day, fellas, when you're in an interview, one day when you're sitting across from your future wife and you're not looking her in the eye, she's going to think something's wrong with you. She's going to think you're shady. She's going to think you're holding something back. You better be able to sit across and look her in the eye. Like, those conversations are the ones I think that they remember, and that's the good stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And to your point, like, okay, y'all are going to run and gun. You're going to shoot a lot of threes. How does that translate? Well, I can tell you how. I've never been to one of your practices. But you're not going to let a kid run and gun and shoot a lot of threes in a game, much less a whole team full of them, if they haven't really spent a lot of time practicing it. And so, how it relates to their classroom? It relates, hey, you got to go home and you got to study. You got to study. You have to prepare. It's called preparation. It's the same thing for a job. You get out of college and you want to go and my youngest son just graduated, and he's going into banking, and he's already learning a ton. He's working a lot, putting in a lot of long hours. Well, guess what? There's a lot of preparation that has to be done before the work can be done. Or the work can be shown. And so I do think it's all related, both on and off the court. And I couldn't agree more. It allows for us as high school coaches to have some impact on young people that I think coaches at higher levels of older kids, specifically collegiate and certainly professionally, really don't get to have those experiences very often. I don't think we get young men at such a a crucial age.
Yeah.
Everybody used to talk about their middle school, but I think high school, especially for boys, because they mature a little bit later, generally speaking. They go through so much change from their freshman to their senior year, physically for sure, but mentally, emotionally, socially. They're going through so many things, and there's so many times that it is fulfilling when you get to have a conversation and think, okay, he's got a chance now. We helped kind of maybe shift his focus a little bit and see things a little bit more clearly. And we did it because we're high school coaches and we're coaching basketball. But there's a plan to it. We're not just out here, faking it. It's got to be real.
If we're hoping that standards are set, if we're hoping that culture is caught, that's just a bad plan. And most likely, we don't want our players to base their game on hope. I don't want you to drive to the paint and launch off of 1 foot, not knowing exactly what you're going to do with it. Like, don't hope that something great's going to work out. Have a plan.
Yes.
And I think one thing you mentioned earlier too are those coaching paychecks is really what we're looking for, because all of us know for the most part that the paychecks that roll in from month to month may not validate the amount of time and effort we're putting in, but it's that email or that text, that visit years later where, and a lot of times, I don't know if you're the same way, but it's sometimes from those knuckleheads, the ones that you just felt like, man, that dude was with me for 4 years and I didn't change. I didn't do anything. I didn't help him at all. Like, that's the feeling. And then you get the text after a loss that you had with this team years later saying, hey, coach, stay with them, keep fighting. Or an email saying, hey, coach, I get it now. Like, I really thank you. Those are the ones that, like, we may be just planting seeds now, but one day we've got to hope that we see the fruits, or someone else sees the fruits of that labor.
I love that expression, coaching paychecks, because that's exactly what they are. There's nothing better than when former guys surprise you and come back up to the gym, or take time to write you a note, or now an email or a text or even a call. We just got Coach Anguiano and I just got a text message from one of our former players at our previous school over at Stevens High School just 2 nights ago, just checking in on us. Hadn't talked to him in quite a while. He was just checking in on us, seeing how we were doing. Those are, you're exactly right, because those are priceless, right? You can't there is no amount that you can put on that. And you hope that you have a positive enough influence, because you're not gonna bat 1,000, right? I mean, you can't impact every single kid the same way, because, like I said earlier, they all run their own race. They're all starting at a different starting line, and so you do the best you can. But I love that expression, the coaching paychecks. That's great. I'm going to steal that.
Borrowed it. But I think one thing that's helped me, and I'm not great at it yet. I know I'm better than I was, and I think that's what we're on this whole journey in life, right? Like, when perfection's never going to be possible here, but we're trying to be better than we were. And I used to take everything so personal. Every parent email, every player that decided not. See, I am at a private school and I don't recruit, and it's hard to get into faith. The standards are high, and it's expensive, and there's a Christian aspect that is lived out. And so, but kids can come here from anywhere. They don't have to live near us. So I get that part of the friction between the public schools, but we lose kids too. It's just as easy to lose them because they don't live here. They can go, right. They can go anywhere else. They can go to the school where they live. Like, so, but I used to take it so personal when people would make those choices, or when they seem to be upset with the program or me or the direction or the culture. But I think maybe some advice I got to keep telling myself is just to not take things so personal, and to understand that everybody is their perception is gonna be different. They don't see the why in everything. And there may be those parents that you just never really get, or players that you never get to connect with. But that's where I go back to just do our very, very best and be faithful. But I don't know about you, Coach, not taking things personally has helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's something that I think doesn't come naturally to any coach that I know, especially when you're younger. Because you're like, our nature, if you're serious about, wanting to compete at a high level, and you hate to lose, what are you going to do? You're going to pour into your profession. In our profession, we're in the kid business, right? That's what we do. We're in the kid business. And so you're pouring into these kids, and sometimes you're not, especially when you're younger, you may not be doing it as well as you would like to do it, right? Or as well as you think maybe somebody else is doing it. And so when you get any sort of negative feedback, or maybe just a lack of positive feedback, man, it can really sting. It can really hurt. And so the old deal, well, I don't care what other people, I haven't met very many people like that in my entire life that really, truly don't care what other, they may be able to brush it off a little easier. The longer you do this, you know, the hide toughens up a little bit. The leather gets a little harder. But I don't know very many people that really pour into the kid business that doesn't sting. I mean, it certainly it stings. You wish it wouldn't, but I think we're all human too. I mean, everybody's. I don't know anybody that is not that way.
Completely agree with you, and I don't. I think doing this, you do have to be ready to have your heart broken like that. I think because you said when you are going to be raw, transparent, you're gonna empty yourself into these guys or these girls. Like there's going to be decisions that are made that they're going to break. It's going to break your heart. But I think that's where and what you can't do, not taking things personal, to me doesn't mean that I am intentionally or that I don't care about others' feelings. Oh, yeah, you don't like what we're doing? Well, screw you. This is just who we are. This is what we do. Well, no, I think level of care is high. And when the level of care is high, then, man, you're going to have your heart broken and it's going to hurt a little bit. But like a player not wanting to play for you anymore, it may be because there's a better situation or they perceive it as a better situation. That's where I used to take it, I think, real personal. Like, what is wrong with me and what we're doing here that they don't want to stay? And so I don't know if other coaches out there have ever felt that way before when kids move, kids leave, kids stop playing your sport. But I don't know. I think the danger is, like you said, don't get so callous. Don't get your hide so tough that you stop caring. Like I think one thing you said early on was that players haven't changed, and I agree with a lot of you said. I think they want to they want to please. I think most players want to feel like their coach is pleased with them and what they're doing on the floor, and so don't hold back that praise. When we see it, and then hold their feet to the fire when we don't. But I want to always, I'm on that line. I want to have that balance of I'm going to give you everything and I'm going to care and I'm prepared for my heart to be broken. But I'm also going to not take it personal when choices are made and still be there to love you. Because I think when you take it personal, then you go, well, hey, you're done. I'm done with you. Shut the door. My phone's always open. Email, I'll always help if I can.
Well, you make great points. I also think there's probably a little bit of the competitor in us. Like if somebody leaves, like,
yeah,
what are you talking about? Our program's better than that program. If somebody leaves, like
there,
even if you don't even if that's not like your focus or at the front of your, I think probably subconsciously there's a little competitiveness, that goes along with that also. But I do agree, and I think that it's well, like we tell our guys all the time, hey, you can't take coaching personally. I'm not coaching you hard right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't like you. I'm coaching you hard right now because I love you, and I think you got a chance to be better. I think if you'll work hard and you'll make these adjustments and then really work at them, you can be better. But I can't take a charge for you. I can't block a shot or make a shot. I can't do any of those things anymore. All I can do is coach you, and I'm going to coach you as hard as I can. And I'm going to tell you I love you, but most of the time I feel like, sadly, they hear when you're coaching hard and not necessarily as much when you're telling them how much you love them or how proud of you are of them. But it's still, you're in the kid business, right? And so it's more of an art than it is a science.
And that's why I do think on the point of the criticisms or the constructive coaching to the praise, you're right on the money. They only hear or mainly hear the negative. And we've all been a part of those conversations where they're rattling off all that. But hey, you know what? You left out all the good stuff I told you, right? Like, or they don't tell the parents all the good stuff we tell them. But I do think that compliment sandwich is really important to communicating to players. Johnny, man, love how you're flying around the floor. I need you to block out better, but continue to keep pushing it like you are, like something positive, what they need to hear, what I need them to do, and then another thing positive. And I do think too, the Don Meyer quote, the more demanding that we can be without being demeaning is a great way to go about it too. But the sandwich is something that I've tried to always remember. Hard to do in the moment because you just want to throw the information that they need out. But how quick is it to make them feel great, teach them, keep them feeling great?
Great point. And I hadn't thought about that expression of the sandwich. I like that a lot. I always think of the quote, nobody ever remembers what you said after the word but. So, if you're going to give a compliment, then just let it end at the compliment. If you're going to correct them, just correct them. But I like that, with the sandwich analogy. But nobody ever remembers what you said after the word. They're only going to hear that
Coach,
last part.
I'm so glad you said that. Rod Olson's book, The Legacy Builder, Phil Beckner was the one that he gives that out to people and he recommended it. It's a short read. And one of the five people that this guy has to talk to throughout the book, one of the five is talking about communication that builds people up. And he talks about but. And he said, here's the one thing you have to do is because this guy was a business leader and he would be talking to people. It's like, you're doing this, but I need you to do this. He said, change that but to now. And this is a focus of mine this season is no more buts, but now. Guys, we're pushing it to the corner. Now I need you to also rip and attack the middle. Like that's way different than guys. We're attacking the corners, but you got to remember to get to the middle.
Yeah,
like it makes
different.
The first action like that's not right. But a lot of times they're trying to do the things that we are asking them to do. Now it can be just a little bit harder. Now we can be even more dynamic. I like what you're doing right there. Now let's get even more let's get lower in our drop. Coach, I think that is a way, like what are we trying to do every day? Like move that needle just a little bit. Get them a little bit farther along, believing in themselves more, shooting and playing with more courage. But to now, game changer, in my opinion.
Love that. I love that. In all of my years of coaching, one thing has really becomes more clear to me year after year. It doesn't matter if it's in your personal life or I don't know if you're the same, but I think instinctively it's probably most of us. The hardest thing there is to do, like as a human, is the art of communication. Like, it doesn't matter, with your wife, with your children, with your parents, with your siblings, certainly with, when there's an age gap and you're trying to communicate with the teenagers that are not related to you, how you say what you say. I mean, how many times do you feel like you really communicated something perfectly only to find out later that boy thought I was saying something completely different. And it used to just blow my mind. I would think, oh my gosh, I couldn't have said it any better. I couldn't have been more clear, but I could have, and I should have. And then you learn from it and then you move forward. But communication is really one of, if not the most challenging thing, one of the most challenging things that every year I get a little older and you never master it, or at least I haven't yet. And I'm getting on up there, but it is really a challenge to communicate appropriately in the moment. Again, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of teenagers, because none of them are at the same place. None.
I would encourage every coach, unless they've already done it, but do it again, to observe a PGC point guard college session. So be an observing coach and go there and listen. I really got lucky, Coach. That's all I can say is I went to the very first Snaps celebration, which was when Mono Watsa took over of PGC. He wanted to bring in people that had been a part of it in different ways and just have kind of like a celebration for where it's going and everything. So they invited me randomly, because I didn't even know PGC was still around. It was when emails were starting to get really big with people selling or sending stuff out, kind of selling, but sending stuff out. And I got one, and I was at McKinney High School. And I was like, I can't believe these guys, this is still going. And so and then I got to Faith, and they invited me out to Snaps, got to meet some of the new guys, and they're like, hey, we're trying to get new directors. Why don't you come on board? And I thought, yeah, I'll do that for sure. I walked into there like coaching a certain way, speaking a certain way to players. But after just that one summer, I was different. And 5 summers of that then really changed. Those guys, and it was really all from Dick DeVenzio, the founder of PGC. He was a genius, but the way that they communicate, the sticky language, the way that Mono taught me, like, we have to help players make the choice themselves and not just force them to do things intrinsic over extrinsic, right? But the way that you communicate, Coach, I think you're right on the money. Here's a question for you. What are the most likely times throughout a game, a season, a practice, where our communication, if we're not careful, really gets us in trouble with our players? Not in trouble like you're going to get fired, but we lose them, or we hurt them, or we break culture. Where do you think?
Well, I think it could literally at any time, but I would say probably for me, it would probably be in season, in game, or even in practice or film session, just because the intensity level of everything is ramped up. Everything is you're operating on short sleep. You're sleep deprived over a long period of time. And there's just so much happening in such a short period of time, and you're trying to, break down film, have a quality practice plan, run a quality practice, prepare the scouting report, make sure that the scouting report is understood and in line with video, and then you've got the energy of the games and the intensity and the pressure and like I can remember we were in a playoff game about 3 years ago, and we had a young man who, it was a packed house. It could have been, I think it was third round of the playoffs. I can't remember, second, third round, but it was loud. It was super exciting, tight game. And I'm yelling at him to come over, and he's not coming over. And I keep yelling at him. And finally, he turns around and he screams at me, "Quit yelling at me." And I'm thinking, I wasn't yelling at you. I was just trying to get your attention so that I could get you over here so that I wouldn't have to yell at you. And yet I was yelling at him. And, and in the moment I was like, unbelievable. But that's what we're dealing with. So for me, I would answer your question probably at that time. I feel like I'm in the most danger of getting sideways, miscommunicating, having things interpreted really differently than I have them in my head. And we're all human. I mean, I have bad days too, and I've got to, really be on guard. I can certainly, I hate myself when I get sarcastic with kids. And I've fallen into that trap many times, and I'll think, oh my gosh, come on, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, because you never know how deep that really pierces.
That's right.
Kids are going to try to laugh it off or try to act like it doesn't. But luckily I'm not good with sarcasm, so I don't use it. But part of me is always worried about. I think we have a good relationship. I think the kid can take it, but how much really pierces? Because I can think back to maybe some comments that were made in jest that made me really think deeper about that than that person intended.
Right.
Go ahead.
We're all human, we're all flawed, and we make mistakes too. I think it's important to own those mistakes, especially if it's about communication and a breakdown of it. I think I don't think there's some of these coaches who we're not going to go out of our way to over apologize for things that we don't really need to apologize for, just to make a young man, maybe feel better. Sometimes it's okay for them to not feel better. They've made a mistake and they need to learn from it. But if we've made a mistake, again, you've got to be real. Like the kids know, like if we're telling them to watch a film and the thing I got after them about isn't showing up on film, they were right and I was wrong. And there's nothing we don't have any hesitation about owning that. And I think that goes towards developing trust. And you're not always going to communicate everything perfectly, especially in a heated moment, either from the outside or from the inside. But I do think that if the trust has been developed over the span of time, then you can repair it more quickly.
I have 4 ways or 4 times that I think I need to be careful. And I think really what you and I are getting at is maybe a little exercise that coaches need to go through. So think back to the times that you've said or done something that you regret it, you wish you could change it, you didn't like your tone, you lost control of the information. And I think we need to be prepared for those times. So like the idea of having emotion, sure, but not being emotional. We want our players that way. Like play with emotion, play with passion, but don't lose it. Don't be emotional. But how often are we the ones that are being emotional? And here are the 4 places that I've felt like where I lose it and I need to be careful. One is in film. If I don't feel like they're taking it serious, or if I'm watching something and I just feel the blood boiling and I lose control. And so in film, I have to be almost like conscious of keep teaching, teach through this. Obviously, we want the environment to be like that, where they're students of the game. Timeouts are a time where if I'm not careful, the heat of the moment, the emotion, the frustration, I won't teach in those times. I won't get the information. They don't need what, like one of the PGC themes is, don't bring past drama into the present. Don't bring what just happened into now. We just gave up blockouts, but we're about to have a huge play going down this way. What do they need now? So stay halftime talks and post game. What I've tried to do in all of those areas is give myself checks and balances. So in film, it's short clips, right? Not 30-minute bouts. And timeouts, I give them 3 things that they need to know, and I don't bring in past anger to it. Do my very, very best. Halftime speeches, we don't go back to the locker room. We stay out on the court. They get in a circle. I talk with my coaches. I let them talk, and then I come in and I ask them, what'd you guys discuss? By the time that I talk to my coaches and they're talking, we're all feeling a lot better. So I get to miss out on that possible moment of bad communication that I'll regret. And then the last one is post-game speeches. Completely have thrown those out, except for the last game of the year when we cry and when we hug each other. But go to the center of the court, start my timer right in front of them. I hit the clock. I show them 3 minutes. I hit the clock. Celebrations, guys. Win or loss. What'd you see? That was good. And we talk about what tomorrow is. I love watching you play. But those 4 times are where I've identified I've said things that I regret. I don't have good enough control in those moments. So I got to set guardrails. And that's helped me a little bit. But you're right on the money. Communication probably will be one of the things that we can do to break our culture.
Well, those are 4 things that are on point, as they say, right? I mean, that's fantastic. I would echo everything that you said there, and certainly I'm probably more guilty than any other coach I know of, having regrets over not being able to teach. I think about timeouts where I've just been so upset, and instead of teaching, we've had teams. I can remember, at a previous coaching stop, where we'd get out of the huddle and I'd think, oh my gosh, we don't have any idea what we're about to run. And I'm yelling at them to try to run something as they're going out there on the floor because I had to vent. Yeah. How stupid, right? I mean, that's just stupid. But I was so caught up in the moment and so upset. And I will tell you, one of the things that traditionally for me, I don't know about you, but like it just kills me when I feel like two things. When I feel like as hard as we've worked, and I say we, I mean our kids and our coaching staff, but mostly our young men, for us to go out and give less than our best.
Yeah.
That really, that just bothers me. Winning and losing is hard and great. But to give less than our best after everything that we've invested that really is hard for me. If we go out there and we play as hard as we can and we just can't make a shot, it's basketball. Sometimes that's going to happen, but to not put forth the effort that we practice with every day, that sets me off. And if I feel like we're not getting a fair shake, I really have a problem with, and that does not happen nearly as much as I felt like it did when I was younger. And I do feel like that is nowhere near as prevalent as it used to be. But when I feel like that's part of my job also is I got to stick up for our guys. If we're not getting a fair shake out there, somebody needs to hear my voice. And it may be the young guys, wearing our jerseys. They need to know that I'm not just going to sit there and take, because I can't take it when I feel like our guys are not getting a fair shake. And I say that hasn't really happened in quite some time. I just feel like that happens less now than maybe it used to. When there was a time when we coached and, every town you went to had literally their own officials that only called games there in their town.
Coach brought them to the game with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that really did happen. Those I'm old enough to remember those days. But we don't see much of that anymore. But yes, I think those are great points and something great for any young coach out there to make note of. I certainly will make note of it myself.
That's a hard balance, though. The fighting for your kids and when you feel like they're doing it right, like on a charge or a block out, or they go off of 2 feet and there's contact and you feel like it's a foul and you see your guy fall or something, like it's hard not to get so protective in those moments. What's the line? So again, going back to accountability, more is caught than taught. We can tell our guys, hey, as players, listen, you don't mess with officials. If they're not there, you're not going to react to calls. You're going to get past it. But with us wanting to fight for them, how much are we maybe showing the opposite? Like, is it contradicting what we're telling our players too far? What's that balance there? Because I've definitely had games where my wife, who does our book most of the time, goes, you're a little too much tonight with the officials.
I've heard that. I've had those comments at the house myself.
She'd say, Matt,
you went overboard there. You went overboard. I would say this. You said, like, it's hard to not take it personal, but what I would say is you cannot return it personally. You can't make it personal back to them. It doesn't matter, even if maybe you are getting home cooking. I will say this too. Been an awful lot of nights where I thought maybe we were really getting home cooking, and I went back and watched the film. You know what? It wasn't that bad. There were some close calls that didn't go our way, and we wanted to win so bad that you start imagining things are worse than they are, and I'm guilty, especially when I was a younger coach, of some of those things. But I do think it is a fine line. But I would say that you're still a paid professional, and it's your job to not make it personal with that official, because we're not, like we tell our guys all the time, hey man, we're not going to get NBA officials. That's not going to happen tonight.
Yeah.
And guess it's okay. You know why? Because I'm not an NBA coach and you're not an NBA player, and we're not playing an NBA team. So let's take these guys and go out there and do the best we can. And, and I think I don't know a single coach, and especially myself, who would not say this. The best games I've ever done coaching, managing the game, making adjustments in it, have been games where I was able to block out the officiating altogether. Yeah. When the game's over and I don't really remember who the officials were, I think those are almost always the games that I feel like, okay, I really did a good job.
That's a good point. And I try to tell players every year that there's going to be 7 to 9 bad calls a game. Like, I'm telling you this, guys, before we play, expect it. So it's like when kids are little and you say that stove is hot, don't touch it. Like, we're telling them ahead of time so they don't touch it. There's 7 to 9 bad calls. Expect it. So when those happen, we shouldn't get upset, but yet I still find myself getting upset. I love the idea of not making it personal with them, and I think you're right on the money. I don't know who said it, but bad coaches deal with referees. good coaches coach their players. And I think at the end of the day, we all want to be good coaches. And I think as this has helped me, these kind of talks, try to eliminate more and more of the bad coach in me that we still have and or just habits or emotions, and try to get a better handle on them. But I think that's a really good reminder that you had.
So many times I think, golly, all these things that we try to impart to our guys, like, basketball's a game of mistakes, man. You miss the layup. Next play, move on. It was a bad call. Next play, move on. How many of those times, in the moment, am I heeding my own advice? Okay, next play. I mean, you don't have time to get worked up over this. I mean, let's move on to the next, whether it's with the player, with the coach, with an official, it doesn't matter. Like, the game, that's the beautiful part of the game is it's moving, and you've got to stay in the moment. And for me, basketball can be hard to stay in the moment if I allow myself to get distracted. And I say that because I have allowed myself to get distracted. It is difficult for me to not be distracted at times. But I do think that we've gotten better the longer we've done it, the longer we're in it, because, you talk with other coaches, you talk with friends, you go to clinics, and you think, if I'm telling kids, move on, next play, have a next play mentality, is that how I'm coaching them? Is that what I'm demonstrating? Am I, and sometimes you don't like the answers that you get if you're being honest with yourself. But I think that helps make us better, and I think it helps our guys understand. Oh, okay, he was able to move on from it, and hopefully you can lead by example sometimes and not just verbally.
Yeah, no, that's good. Confidence in players is, I think, something we need to be conscious of, where their confidence level is throughout a season or throughout a practice. There's a debate on whether we can give them confidence or not, where it comes from, but how do you build it or at least support it in your players?
Great question. I come down firmly on the side of we cannot give them confidence. I do think that we can take confidence away from them, and you have to really guard against that. I believe that confidence occurs, and we openly talk about this with our guys. Confidence comes from doing difficult things over a period of time in pursuit of a difficult or challenging goal, and then achieving that goal. And I think that for us, one of the things that we found through the years, David Milson, God rest his soul, was at Cedar Hill. And when I opened a new school, Stevens High School here in San Antonio, maybe 22, 23 years ago. That was the job I had before making the move over here to Reagan. I knew that our demographics were going to be similar, and I knew David was a great coach. And I met him just, at TABC and state tournament, and I knew what a great guy he was. But we had to take our oldest son up to Shriners Hospital in Dallas. And so there wasn't much for me to do. My wife kind of wanted me to get away. And so I just cold called David, and for 2 or 3 days, I went every day and just spent all day with him there at Cedar Hill. And, one of the things that he told me, he said, John, we're going to miss time in the gym before we miss time in the weight room. And I loved how physical his teams were. I loved how hard they played. And I loved his interactions with those teams. And so I picked his brain. I stole every idea I could from him. And we really dedicated ourselves to the weight room when we got back, and we still do that to this day. We lift 3 days a week. Now you can lift in the summer. We lift almost year round, 3 days a week. And for several reasons. One, if you want to be a physical team, you better have some body mass, right? And it's got to be solid. But I think more importantly for us is, again, we're coaching teenage boys. I've never found anything that helps young men develop confidence in themselves better than the weight room does. And I will tell you this, here's a good story for you. Quite a while ago, we used to go up to Austin and go and visit with their strength and conditioning coach. And I remember one time, him telling us, it was right after Kevin Durant left. And he said, one thing I'll tell you is in basketball, it's got to be basketball specific lifts. I'd get fired. They should fire me if I was teaching Kevin Durant, if we were developing his bench press. There's no basketball movement in the bench press. And I thought, well, I know you're smarter than me, but here's what I know. High school boys, they measure their strength by one lift and one lift only, and they always have and they always will. Every single time. Nobody ever asks, what do you curl? What are you doing on the French press? They're not doing any of that stuff. They want to know, what do you bench? And that is why we bench. And that's why we max on the bench. Most of our guys, especially when we get them in as freshmen, gosh, we got guys barely get the bar up, right? And they don't know how to lift, and they just don't. And we celebrate the old 200-pound club, and that's a big barrier for most of our young guys. And when they get up 200, we're going to film it, we're going to put it on social media, and everybody's going to be excited for them. And you know what? When a kid hits the 200-pound club, there's something that is just magical about his confidence, because he had to do it. Like we tell our guys, hey, man, you did that. Your mom can't love you enough for you to bench 200 pounds. Your dad can't give you enough, positive feedback and pats on the back. Your coaches can't inspire you enough. Nobody can do that but you. You did that. Here's the number that you started with, and you just threw up 200 pounds, and you did it by yourself. And you did it because we've had a plan and there's support, but you did it. And I believe that is a great lesson for young people to learn. And it bleeds over to what we do on the court. You want to be a great shooter? You got to get in the gym and you got to shoot 10,000 shots, and you got to shoot them at game speed. You know what? I've never had a guy that shot 10,000 shots at game speed that didn't turn out to be a good shooter.
Yeah.
It's never happened. We're batting 1,000 on that. We just hadn't had a whole lot of guys 10,000 shots up. But Jack Kramer is one. Jack Kramer, you're probably too young to remember, but he was a famous tennis player back in the 40s and 50s, and he wrote a book, and he said, you want to have a great serve in tennis, you have to practice. You have to hit 10,000 serves, 10,000 of them, and then you're gonna have a great serve. Well, I felt that way about shooting. If you go in the gym and you get up 10,000 shots, Jamal Wilkes shot it over there. A pretty daggum good shooter because he practiced shooting it over and over and over the same way. So I believe that confidence comes from achieving something that was hard. And when you're a teenager, the weight room is a huge opportunity to develop confidence in yourself. All of a sudden, guys are walking around a little bit. Those shoulders are back a little bit, and they're kind of looking in the mirror. And you know what? Now, all of a sudden, all those other lifts we're doing, there's a reason for those. Now they're a little bit more bought in. We are big believers in the weight room. We're big believers in the mentality that it sets. So you want to be a tough physical guy, the weight room is your friend. It's not the only way to build confidence, but it's the first way that we've seen it have a direct correlation to confidence out on the floor. Because I think it's easy for kids to see that translates. Oh, if I put that work in the weight room, then I come over here, put it in the gym, I should see those kind of results as well. And they should, if they're focused and they're following a set routine. I do think coaches have to be careful with taking confidence away. I do think you can hurt kids' confidence, again, with poor communication skills. Even a guy with a good heart can say the wrong thing at the wrong moment, and it can give a guy, it can set him back. But I'm not afraid of hurting kids. Like bad shooters, I'm not afraid of hurting their confidence. I mean,
what did Coach Sampson say? He's like, I don't want my bad shooters to be confident in their shot.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm a big believer that we don't give any confidence. Can't be given. I've never experienced that in my own personal life. The things I'm confident in, you know what, I've worked really hard for, and I've done them, and I had to overcome some things and there were times I didn't know if I'd ever do them, but I did. And those are things now that I'm confident in. I think that's pretty easy to see, with young teenage guys.
Coach, I love so many great things there. You started off with a really small nugget, though, that we can't forget to do, which is call other coaches, ask questions, have conversations. Part of, like we talked at the very beginning of my motivation for this is, it's hard, getting harder and harder, or it seems like there's less opportunities just to go places with other coaches. TABC is still there, but even then, I feel sometimes when I go down there, there's some isolation. I have my group. We don't really reach out and talk. State tournament, when it was in Austin, I felt like was one of those deals where everybody meets there. It's almost like its own clinic. But so now, Zoom is still a way to get to have a little bit of that. I love what Coach Milson said. I had an opportunity to meet him a few times before he passed.
Great man, great coach, but a better man.
Yeah, and I think he was so spot on, and I didn't get it. I didn't get that for probably the first half of my coaching, which was not going to sacrifice weight room time for the court. I think majority of us will say that we have so many things we have to get done. Where can we cut? We'll cut that. So the last 5 or 6 years, a huge motivation for us at Faith is to be more, we shoot it and we run and gun. Let's get more physical. And as a player, sometimes it's funny, Coach, like you forget what you actually had to do to be a player or to compete at whatever level you're at. The weight room was the only way that in high school or in college I could compete. But I forgot that early on. I thought it was all skill, all court. So we've been going 3 days a week in season and 4 days out of season for the last 5 years. You're right on the money. I usually equate the weight room with toughness, but I've never really thought about it as far as building confidence. But it's so true. When you can get your guys to start to take their shirts off in the weight room and they're flexing and lifting, you've got it. Like it's growing. They're starting to see that, okay, wait a minute. If I put in time and effort, I get something out of it. Like there is that idea that will translate to shooting, translate to schoolwork that you get from the weight room. I've told the guys, like, I want that what we do in there will just enhance everything we do out here. I think it's important for basketball players for us to connect the weight room, because there are the Kevin Durant's that he couldn't bench 135 in college, but he's one of the best dudes to ever play. They don't all need it, but it'll help all players, though.
I know this. It hadn't hurt any of them.
That's right.
We've had come through. It's not held them back.
Yeah.
A couple of other things. One that we stole from David. David said, it's the weight room was also the only place, and we do that to this day. It's the only place, the only time where I'm not constantly, teaching and correcting and motivating and pushing. Hey, we're in the weight room, and especially like you said, once those guys start to feel a little, they're kind of in there. I'll get in there and I'll kind of pose with them, and is this what you're hoping to get this, And David, he was skinny, and he would make fun of himself in there, and those guys would crack up. And we've had guys, obviously they know they'll roll their eyes at me, but I think it's important for them to see a little bit different side of us, right? I mean, if you're just always on, that's really hard. And so there's that. And then, like you talked about individually, but we share this with our guys. Hey, the weight room is a great equalizer for us. For us to compete at the highest level in our region and to try to make a run in the playoffs every year, the truth of the matter is we are rarely going to be the most athletic team on the floor. I mean, at some point, we're going to play people that are more athletic than us. And we've got to hope that we can close the gap some athletically by being physical and by our work in the weight room. And hopefully we've got enough confidence because of the hours that we've put in the weight room that it translates over into style of play. And I do think that it is an equalizer. It has helped us through the years. Again, whether we are the stronger team or not, we think we are more often than not. And heck, that's half the battle. If you can get them believing, right, then you're halfway home. So I think I'm a big believer in that.
Coach Thomas was the master of that. I came when I moved down to Texas from Pennsylvania, and right before my freshman year, I was only about 5'7", really skinny, size 13 shoe, but I was skilled. But I had never been in the weight room, and I didn't care about it, no connection, and I slid by as a freshman. Grew a bunch going into my sophomore year, but still super skinny. And going into my junior year, Coach Thomas said, he's like, he might not have said tail, but he said, if you don't come back stronger your junior year, I'm going to kick your tail. But what he did was he would be in the weight room with us in open gyms in the morning. It was open gym, open weight room. Maybe sold us Advocare products back in the day, some POS2 that had creatine in it. Maybe he was selling that, but we got into all that stuff and we were lifting in that. But he used to say, if you feel big, you play big. And he was right on the money. And my senior year, we had the most jacked team around, but we also gave us a lot of confidence But you also got, you touched on something else about in the weight room. It's a great moment to get, so positive touches are a big thing. A goal of mine is to say everybody's name every workout and to get some type of positive touch, pat on the back, a fist bump, a bump, like something, so that every player goes home, I heard my name, and there's some type of interaction. Because you probably had, like, or either heard from other players or things, or where I actually talked with a player the other day about a previous school, and it was, I didn't know if the coach knew my name. And so we have to be intentional with that. But the weight room's a great time, and then how we meet with players one-on-one is a great time for them to see us in a different way. Because you're right, if it's only when we're on in practice, then there's going to be a disconnect between what did Don Meyer say? That they don't care what you know until they know how much you care. They need to know that. And you nailed a couple points where we can create that relationship.
Yeah, we're believers. And, the beautiful thing about basketball is one of many beautiful things is there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Like Bobby Knight's way wasn't Dean Smith's way, and Dean Smith's way wasn't John Wooden's way, and John Wooden's way wasn't Coach K's way. I mean, there's all different, but for us, and for as the head coach, for my personality and for our coaching staff, and for the talent that we have, because we've been blessed with some great players, just not overwhelmingly athletic players. We've had some very good athletes, but that's not our bread and butter, so to speak. And so we're big believers in the weight room, and making sure that it makes sense to the guys. Why are we doing this in the weight room? Why? Here's why. Because this is how we're going to use it on the court. And this is how, there's no substitute for confidence. You're going to be a better player if you're confident, and nothing wrong. We like it. You want to, if a guy goes in the weight room and he's taking his shirt off, he's put in the work. We'll tease and make fun of guys for all sorts of things, but if a guy goes in there and takes his shirt off and he's kind of checking him in the mirror, hey, we encourage that. Let's go. Let's get bigger.
And everything that we do, whether it's skill work, gameplay, weight room, celebrating the improvements. I mean, if we we're about the process, then when the process is happening, we better be celebrating that. Instead of, hey, no crap, you went up, next, let's go. Aren't you? You're supposed to do that, right? Yeah. Like, get your shirt on, keep working. We got more to do. That's all true, but man, celebrate. One of my objectives every day is to have fun. I want to keep fun in the gym, and I also reject the idea that you can't be serious and disciplined and have fun at the same time. I think you can, but I think you've nailed a few of the ways that that's possible.
Nobody ever made a law that said you can't work hard and have fun. We talk about that all the time. Hey, you can work hard and have fun doing it. Like there's no law that says those two things have to be separate. You can work hard and have fun. And we try to do that every day.
Coach, before I let you go, because we've already been going for over an hour and a half, the speed round. These are going to be quick questions. The first thing that pops in your head, just blurt it out.
Okay.
All right.
You got the power to edit it if I screw it up.
Bleep. Yeah. I've got a couple of new ones in here I'm going to try out on you. So, favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, Baskin Robbins chocolate chip. Nothing else.
Nice. Greatest shooter of all time?
I'd say LB, Larry Bird.
All right. Here's a new one. Do you stand up or sit down during games?
I stand more than I sit, but as I get older, I sit more than I used to.
Do you think that there is something to maybe a message sent to your team that you trust them a little bit more when you're sitting, or do you feel like standing lets them know that you're there with them? Is there anything to that?
Not for me as much. For me, the standing and sitting goes more for my assistant coaches. Sometimes I stand right in their way. And we went to something a few years back where now we really have an offensive and a defensive coordinator as coaches. There's our enormous coaching staff here in San Antonio is 3 of us, me and 2 others, and I'm lucky. I've got great guys, and I've had great guys. But sometimes I want to hear what they have to say, and sometimes I want them to be able to stand up and communicate with our guys out there on the court. And obviously, we get told if we have more than one person standing, we'll have somebody in stripes come by and remind us only one coach up at a time. So I'm a little more sensitive to that because those guys have worked so hard and they're so invested in what's going on out there. I want them to have the ability to coach, what their, part of the game is as well.
If you could choose 3 dinner guests to have from any time period, who would they be?
Not basketball or just anything?
Anything.
I would love to have, kind of going off the board with you. I'd love somebody like George Washington.
Yeah.
I'd love to have somebody like John Wayne, and I'd love to have somebody like Jimmy Buffett.
John Wayne, that's a first. That's a first. I've heard that one. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Best basketball movie of all time.
Oh, come on. If you're not going to say Hoosiers, then it's The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Come on.
I've heard that one before. I have.
Yeah. You got to be of a certain generation to get that reference.
Texting or talking?
I'm talking, but I find myself texting now more than ever.
Yeah, I do too. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
100% a shot clock, which I think a lot of people would be surprised, but I think it would be so invigorating as a coach. It would change the way we did everything. It would change the way we prepared, the way we game planned, it would just change everything. And
I think it'll make us better as coaches.
I absolutely think so. I think it would make the game better. The only thing that it really takes out is stalling.
The ability for an inferior opponent to have that card to play.
Right.
Yeah.
And hey, I've been that guy. We've held the ball. I mean, in my first job, when I was coaching down in the Valley, we absolutely held the ball. We were trying to win, and I don't begrudge any coach that does it. Yeah. But if the shot clock would have been in place, I would like to think even back then, we would have worked to find another way to try to figure out a way to win. And there's always another way.
I like that. Oh, here's a new one. Do players sit the rest of the half with 2 fouls?
Depends on the game, I would say. I'm more situational than that, but we certainly would give it a lot of consideration. I don't like guys in foul trouble too early.
Yeah. Favorite holiday?
I don't know if it qualifies as a holiday, but I'm going to say New Year's Eve because that's my anniversary.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Great celebration there.
I'm old enough to not always remember how many years it is, but I know what day it is.
You're never going to miss that date.
Never forget it. Yeah.
That's good. Up 3 on defense with 5 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
It depends if you've practiced it or not practiced it. If you practiced it, then foul. And if you haven't, then not. If you're split right down the middle, I would tend to not. And I'll tell you why. I think we probably lead the nation in high schools who have given up late tip-ins off of bad blockouts. And so I'm typically not in favor of that, but we have had teams where we trusted them and we practiced it. And so we've done both.
A few more.
That's a terrible answer, isn't it?
Actually, I think you've nailed a bunch of them. Like most of these, especially the basketball stuff, it's just not black and white. It is so situational. But you said it though, you better be prepared and whatever you are going to do, it better be practiced. What book would you give someone?
Well, I just referenced him. One of my favorite books I read every summer is Tales from Margaritaville, the short story collection from Jimmy Buffett.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah. If you haven't ever read it, do yourself a favor. Pick it up. It's fantastic. And the first short story is fantastic. There's another one in there about a high school football coach, but it's relatable as well. Just a collection of short stories, and they're fantastic. He was an incredible artist. 2
more. Favorite place to travel?
In the summer, we like to go to the mountains and Ruidoso, and in the winter, we like to go back where I'm from, down by the coast, down to South Padre.
Nice. In basketball, as a player, who is the GOAT?
Oh, come on now. Michael Jordan. Come on.
Come on now.
Come on. That's not even like, come on. And let me tell you who's second. It's not who everybody else said. Tim Duncan is second.
Wow. Okay.
Darn right.
That's a first. Tim Duncan has never entered the conversation before until right now.
Well, you can't get a basketball savant like me all the time on here, Matt. That's true.
But also you live in San Antonio.
Yeah, well,
does that have a little bit to do with it, or?
Yeah, well, maybe so. Maybe now that you mentioned
he was
that.
great. He was great, no doubt.
Phenomenal. Yeah, he was phenomenal. Now, in the modern era, I don't know anybody that, and all joking aside, was a great individual player, but also made so many other players better than he did.
Yeah,
and I do think that counts. But I'm
Coach,
probably a little bit of a homer anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. Coach, this has been so much fun. Almost 2 hours of your time. And you know what? I love all these talks, but I think some of my favorite ones are when it just flows from beginning to end. And there's just a great conversation. And I think I got so many great nuggets from you. And I just want to appreciate or thank you for the giving me your time, but then also what you do for players and the amazing career you've had. Just this was an honor for me.
No, Matt, the honor's all mine, and you're being too kind. With all of the incredible coaches that you've had on here, I'm looking forward to continuing to listen to more of them. I've literally picked something up from every single one that I've listened to, and in no small part, that's not just because of the guests that you've had on. You do a tremendous job. You're a great host. The way you ask questions and you're self-deprecating, but you share. You really share a lot. Like I really appreciate it. I got a lot of nuggets myself out of this conversation, and I really enjoyed it, and hope that when you come to San Antonio next, maybe TABC next year or the state tournament, then we can get together. And I would love to get you together with some guys down here and some guys up there, and we can sit around and talk basketball a little bit more.
Coach, let's do that. That would be amazing. I'm in, because I'll be down to TABC every year. I think it's one of the best events that we have in this state. I love what TABC does for all of us coaches, and I want, especially this next generation of coaches, to get into that. Like, let's get back into staying up late at dinner, talking hoops. This is fine. Podcasts and stuff is fine. And I mean, I learn on all of these as well, but nothing like just testing what you think against others. And so, but Coach, I'm in for sure.
Well, and I know you got to go. I won't be long, but I will say, you mentioned that earlier when I met Chris Beard. We were working the camps at UT, and I used to work camps all over the state when I was younger, and high school coaches were abundant at all of the camps. And we would sit around. I learned a ton. I've still got a filing cabinet full of files with, scribbled notes. And I remember Larry Brown, the other Larry Brown, our Larry Brown. One time, I was asking him a question, and I asked him a question about like full court pressure and difference in man, full court, and zone. And he said, well, why can't you mix it and do both? Well, it was like my head exploded. It was, it was revolutionary to me. But that's where, at that same camp, that's where I met Danny Nix, and he had Nat Lund with him, an old high school coach from Wichita Falls, and the Romy Vela just passed away down here, sadly, but was there and was real involved in all the camps. But there were so many high school coaches that a young coach had access to. We try to have some get-togethers and do some things where we invite some younger coaches to get together with them, because I don't think they have the access to high school coaches that we used to have when I was a little bit younger. So I think an idea like your podcast, while it's not exactly the same, and it's certainly been invigorating for me, everyone I've listened to, whether I'm out walking on the road or traveling. You do a great job, and thanks for all that you do for high school basketball and high school basketball coaches. Thank you for having me on. I really am honored.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.